Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at how we use the chart component to visually display our data. So we'll start off by creating a new form, and I've done this here and called it display sales, and I'm just going to drop the chart onto that. I'm then going to dock that so that it fills the screen, so I'm just going to set dock to center, and then we can begin to add some code. So I'm going to right click and just go view code. First thing I'm going to do is just create myself a simple private method here just to generate the graph. So that's a good name to call it, generate graph. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an instance of our coffee shop entity. Apart from this time, I'm going to use a slightly different thing. I use a using statement here, and all this does, it just ensures that it's correctly closed and we don't waste any memory when we're done with it. So CSE coffee shop entity equals new coffee shop database entity. So that's the job done really. Using statements are quite simple. You just put everything that uses that coffee shop entity in between those brackets there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce again another little bit of syntax you might like to try out. It's similar to link, and I'll on the proper version of the coffee shop database there's a link to the Microsoft site where you can find out some more. But here I'll just try and talk you through the basics. What we're going to do is I've used something called var, and this basically indicates that we don't actually know what type of data we're getting back yet. So var is almost like a generic data type, and I've called it query. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to produce me a query that's quite similar to SQL. So I'm going to say from, and from I'm going to look for product. So that's just a name, that's just like a variable name there. And I'm going to say from or in, and we can use our CSE dot. Now I want to be looking at the transaction items, so if I just find that here, we can click on that, and we're saying here from the transaction items find me all of the products within that. So that's the first bit done. Now I've got a choice here. I could put a where in, but I'm not really worried about putting a where in because I don't want to filter it down, but I do want to group it. So I'm going to add a group product, and I'm going to select what I'm going to group it by. Now I want to group it by the description. Unfortunately description isn't in the transaction items table, but it is available to us, and if we think about it, if we look for product, you can see that because that's a transaction item, it contains a list of a table of products. Okay, so I'm going to go into that table and I'm going to get the description from that. So that means now I can group my products by their description, simply because we've got that one-to-many relationship going on there. And I just need to say what I'm going to put into, and I'm just going to say into G for group. When I've done that, I'm going to go select, and I'm going to again use a slightly different bit of syntax here. I'm going to say select new, so I'm going to make my own special class here. So my class is going to contain the attribute product ID, and that product ID is going to have the key, so group.key, and the group.key will be description in this case. So that's just pretty simple. And I'm going to add another custom property here, so it's going to be total units sold, and that's going to be equal to the group, and I'm going to count how many items are in that group. So g.count, and that will just count those items up, bracket off, and semicolon just to finish that. So that's the query made that's going to select those products, and I'm going to use those products to bind to my chart. Okay, next job, I'll need to take my chart 1, and I'll need to give it a data source, and I can give that the data source of query. So that's that bound to that data source now. Once I've done that, the other things are to just specify bits and pieces about the chart. So chart 1, and I'm going to go and look at the series part of this. So let me get series loaded up there, and I say what the series name is. So this is going to be series 1, and what I'm going to do is tell it to look at the X value member, so what goes into the X-axis, and that's going to be equal to product ID. Now where am I getting this from? That's because here you can see I've called it product ID, so I just give it the same name down here, so product ID. Simple really. And then the next thing to do here is to declare the y-axis, so let's just put that in. So chart1.series give the series a name, so same as before, series 1, because it belongs to the same one. I'm actually going to lose the space from that, I think, make life a bit easier. So series 1, and this time I'm going to do the Y value member, and the Y value members are going to be the total units sold, again coming from that custom property that I created there. So nice and straightforward. The only thing I might want to do is give any of the series a name, so I'm just going to save myself some time. I'm just going to copy and paste that down there, and I'm going to use the dot name, and I'm going to say the name of this is going to be series is going to be products. All we've done that, we've just got to bind the chart. So chart1 dot, we just use the data bind method there, nice and simple. And finally I need to just use the chart dot show method just to make sure that shows correctly on the screen. So that's pretty much it really for creating a graph. You get the data and you can use the coffee shop entity to do that. You can use the queries that we looked at in previous videos, bind it to whatever your query is, and then literally create the series for it. By using this using statement here, it means that the graph is going to be created, and then once the code leaves here, it's going to close or dispose of that coffee shop entity. So just keeping you know, a bit of basic housekeeping for your graphing form there.